All right, I call this meeting to order, and if you'll all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, no. I make a motion to, should I do this now?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to show the timing. I make a motion to afford the superintendent full hiring privileges through September 5th, 2021.
Okay,
I'll
thank you for
second.
that. Alicia, second. Okay. Any discussion? All right, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 7-0-0. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Then we have coming up to public comments. I know that there's a lot of interest in an item that's on the agenda tonight, the reopening framework. And we are going to have a special public comments that goes specifically with that one. So this first public comments is about anything else on the agenda other than the reopening framework, okay? Because we'll have a special time for that after it's presented. So if there's any public comments, you want to do your spiel with, there you go, the policy.
Yeah, of course. You can see the policy right up on the screen, so feel free to give that a read before you choose to make a public comment. Marcia just laid the ground rules for the first public comment session, but essentially what we would ask for is just your first name, your last name, your town of residence, and then to adhere to the policy listed above. We do have an in-person audience and we do also have a digital audience. So what we can do is anybody who is physically here and would like to make a public comment, there's a little music stand right there. I'll make the microphone live in a second. You guys can form a line and we can address that way. Anybody digitally speaking that would like to make a public comment, you can do so by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. And by doing that, you'll be able to be acknowledged and able to speak. So do we want to start in person, remote?
Let's start with the in-person and then we'll give remote an option. And again, just, it's not about the reopening framework. It's about other things that are on the agenda right now. Okay. So in the public, is there any? Not seeing any hands or any motion towards the music stand. So go with the remotes.
And it's the same for remote. We don't have anybody for public comments at this point in time.
Okay. All right. All right, then let's go to the superintendent's report.
All right, so we'll just do a short superintendent's report since I'll be speaking on this in a little while. Basically, today was the first day for tryouts. Went over to the field, lots of learners out there. Beautiful day, so I'm excited about that and for the season to come. And hope that we really have record numbers of participants this year. That's what we're aiming for. Academics, we start next week with our opening days for teachers. So new teachers are Monday, Tuesday. I meet with them and they also do some work at their school sites. And then Wednesday is when all the teachers come back for about 4 days. And we'll have some professional development during that time frame. And then facilities, we could go on for a very long time. We won't. It's messy. Lots of things happening. We've certainly made a lot of progress. It looks so much better out there right now than it did even a week ago. If you were to come into the SAU side of things, that's all kind of stripped down due to water damage, due to some recent rainstorms we've had. And so that in combination with really some difficult soil or that we've had here, and in some cases there were a few difficulties in Ringe, not as many. We've had to do a lot more work to make sure that we're doing the job right and not just doing the job as it originally was slated to be done.
Can I
That's-
ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just, how, I know that they've been working really, really hard to stay on the timeline. And I know with school opening and people coming and how's the timeline?
Well, today was the original timeline.
Okay.
So that's not
Not
happening.
happening.
I do believe that we will be, we'll have both of these, both in Ringe and also here, the parking lots paved and striped, ready to go by the beginning of summer. I hope so. I hope the striping will be there, but they'll definitely be paved by the time school starts.
Okay. All right. Any questions from anyone else for the superintendent? Okay. Thanks very much. And we'll move right into the reopening framework.
Great. So last week, a group of individuals met. There was a group of about 20 or so who met together, from people from Ringe, from Jaffrey, from the school, to work on what this year's reopening framework was going to be. And we do have to have a reopening framework. That is something that we have to do in order to receive certain federal funds and so forth, and to do a lot of the work that we need to do. So this year's reopening framework looks different than last year's. Basically, the work that we did prior to July was to get a framework that we thought, based upon that time frame, was going to work, which had for the possibility of some social distancing. 3 feet was put in there as opposed to the 6 feet. 3 feet is or a meter is the recommendation from the WHO and what most countries do use for social distancing. There were just a couple of us who use 6 or 2 meters. And then masking was looking at the time as optional. And so at that point in time, they were going to come back to revisit it, though, after seeing what the data told them. At that time, everything was very low, moving in the right direction relative to COVID anyway. So if we go to the first slide, this one just shows some state COVID data. Now, this is as of the 13th. I went and retrieved it today, but they didn't have today's information on there. And this is just a couple of slides. You can see that the entire state of New Hampshire is in what they would consider the red, or the substantial transmission category. And then over to the left, you can see some pictographs, some line graphs, another graph that had to do with some bar graphs. And so just kind of looking at that just gives you a snapshot of what's happening. Around the 13th, there were 268 new cases throughout the state. That's an increase over the previous 7 days. Current hospitalization rate through the state is right there as well. And you can see the graphs. The green line is the vaccination curve and over time. And you saw that, once March, April, May, we had some vaccination clinics here as well. That number increased, kind of leveled off, still going up slightly. And then blue is the number of cases. So you can see that when this original framework was developed, those cases in June 1st and June 15th and so forth were at the low. And you can see right now where we're at, it's going a little bit in the other direction. Also, looking at, if I could just go back to that one, important for conversation purposes later on, you have total deaths by age, which is on the left-hand side. That's an important graph because we're talking about specific age groups that we're talking, with our schools. So 0 to 19, really not 0, probably 3 to 19. That's really the age groups that we'd be dealing with. This right here is just some local COVID data. This is as, again, retrieved today, but may have been Friday's information. You can see that on the right, vaccination percentages right now, though the state vaccination rate on the last slide was closer to 60%, and the area of COVID was of Cheshire County was approximately, 53, 55%. Jaffrey and Ringe are quite a bit lower in the region than that. We have with a just under 35% vaccination rate in Ringe and about a 44% in Jaffrey. So neither location is hitting 50% in that area. So we're well below the state average and below the Cheshire County average as well. New cases in the last 14 days. For a while there, we were in that category of 1 to 4. It has recently jumped up.
And actually, I think this is today's because I checked on Friday and it was 7 in Jaffrey and 6 in Ridge. So,
okay. This next slide, a little bit difficult to see, but these are some graphs that we've presented before. I think they actually might be in the original framework that we worked on in June. And it's really just some survey data that we had for both parents and families and also for our staff as well. And the data here on that first one, if positivity cases stay at the same rate they are now, or if they continue to decrease, how comfortable would you be having your children with, at the same levels of restrictions that are in place right now? Most would not want to have had heavy restrictions. Basically, that's what that graph says. And so that trend carries over the entire time. Unfortunately, this graph cuts off the question, so I don't have it all in front of me. But these trends showed that if things were in good order, if things were staying low, that there was a sense that we would want to not have the restrictions that we had last year. That in some cases, that large group was really, we don't want restrictions whatsoever. However, if we go to the right, that's on the left-hand side. If we go to the right and we have an uptick in COVID cases, I believe the blue, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, the blue is families.
Yeah, the top rows are families. The bottom row is staff.
Thank you. The same sort of thing takes place where there is a shift where you see that there are more families who would want to see some restrictions put back in if things increase as they have been. Not quite to the level of the teachers. The teachers would prefer to have maybe a little more restriction if the rates went up, although, fairly even across the board. There were still quite a few individuals who were saying no restrictions needed for the staff as well there. Yeah.
What is the percentage of staff and employees that are vaccinated?
So I don't have that exact number,
Within
but within between 80 and 90%, I would imagine. If we were to go, we were the ones in my office to schedule all vaccinations and so forth. So assuming everyone went then, that shows you would have been around 75% at that point in time. And there were others who went on their own, like I went on my own.
I think new staff is mixed in.
New staff is mixed in and so forth, and there's been more time. That's right. So basically, this graph right here, 20% of families and 28.8% of staff want the same mitigation strategies as last year. If we have some sort of increase, 42% don't want any, and about half of the staff would like some mitigation strategies. A little over a third of families would want some as well if things were increasing. So items to consider that we're going to kind of talk about tonight. And I'm using some of the slides that were used for that committee. I was not at the committee meeting for this, as I'm not on that group, but certainly have met with several of the members afterwards to make sure that I had all the thinking down accurately. And one topic, and we received quite a few emails about allowing outside organizations to use our buildings. Are we going to do that? Busing, what is going on with busing and masks or social distancing? Social distancing and masking, those are the topics. Over the past, I would say 3 weeks, received quite a few emails, and all those emails have been forwarded on to the school board for their reading. So I want to thank anyone who's here who sent an email, anyone in the public online who sent an email. Although last week I wasn't around, I was out of state, but those emails, even though I didn't respond to those personally, they still were forwarded on to the school board. So the conversation around allowing outside organizations use the facilities, last year we kept this, I would, a minimum, it was almost not at all. We tried to make certain that we limited any individuals coming into the school buildings. Do we continue? The question was, do we continue to keep this rule in place, or do we allow organizations to use our spaces and just follow the framework? And so there was some conversation that was had, and really the decision would be that we should encourage people to use the facility, but with the caveat that they need to clean. Or if that can't be possible, maybe there's a fee that we need to provide to cover the cleaning. That's important. Some of that might have to go to policy because we have an entire policy.
We recently reviewed that one and put a structure in place that will allow for that payment to be taken.
Yep. Busing, this one we don't have a lot of say in. It's public transportation. It falls into the realm of public transportation is what we've been told, and that all school buses and any buses, any planes, airplanes, any type of public transportation, masks are to be worn. So if you're taking the bus, masks will be required on buses. The staggering of, I think that the buses will likely be, anytime we can go one person per seat, we'll be doing that. Last time we did a bit of more of a stagger, but I think we can get more people on the buses this coming year, but masks would be expected. As for other areas, there are recommendations. So we have the CDC. I underlined some key pieces here where I have recommendations and goals. Part of our goal, apart from just making sure that we're keeping people's safety and health at the forefront, is to make sure that we have our kids in school and in person in school. And so we do share some of these goals with the CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, our state departments that we have. Though there's some neat things that we have learned, and there are students who did very well in a remote environment, for the majority, the in-person learning is what we believe to be the best. And so the conversation we have tonight is really about making sure that we are keeping people in person 5 days a week, all time. We're not offering those remote options. So the recommendations for social distancing, CDC does have some about 3 feet, and then a little bit more. They haven't changed their stance really on the 6 feet rule. New Hampshire DPHS has also said at least 3 feet. If you're going to be using social distancing, that's a definition. For face masks, CDC would encourage universal indoor masking for all individuals 2 and older. American Academy of Pediatrics, same thing in schools, so in the building. And the Department of Health and Human Services over here in New Hampshire recommend the face masks use a local assessment of risk. So your decisions are made more locally in your community, how transmission is going on in your community, a variety of things. So they leave it up to the local organization. So SAU 47 in this case. And I think you'll see across the state, you'll see some of these plans will look a little bit like, they'll look alike, but a lot of them will just not, not be the same. So already, if you, watch the news or read the newspaper, there are schools in New Hampshire who have said masking, absolutely. We've had schools in the region or in the greater Monadnock region, a little bit east of us as well, who have made those decisions. We've also had people in this region say, let's make masks optional at this point in time and revisit it when we have more data. So those have been the extremes so far. Our current plan on page 8 states that the wearing of face masks, and this is something that you've approved already, the wearing of face masks is no longer required for learners and staff members inside or outside district buildings and grounds. However, should there be an outbreak of COVID-19 or other highly contagious illness within the district or greater Jaffrey Ridge Community District, may reinstate the mask wearing requirement for a class, school, or district-wide. So the question was asked of the committee, so what do? We want to keep our school community safe. We want to keep our learners in person. We want the last meeting that they had, which was before this one, they met in that June timeframe. There was a fairly good conversation about, I guess the quote was put COVID in its place, meaning it's here, it's an illness. It's mutated. You got another variant, so the Delta variant, you have a Lambda variant that, there's not a lot of literature on at this point in time. So, let's look at this. I think that phrase was kind of, let's look at this as it's here, and it might be here for some time. They've had situations in the past where outbreaks of illness have happened within the school district. There's some of that noted in some of the emails that were sent my way. Certainly, there was 2 or 3 years ago, there was an outbreak, probably the flu, over in one of our schools, our elementary schools. Actually, a couple of the elementary schools, one got hit worse than the other one, and had about 25% of, a little bit less than that, 24% of the population was out for a period of time. It capped off around that 85, 88 number out of a school that would have been just under 400. And then whether we mask to start the year or not, more clarity could be added to situations in which we would consider or mandating masks. And other districts are looking at creating matrices for when to wear the mask. So some of these matrices, I get emails from a variety of superintendents. There are a lot of them out there. Basically, they're decision-making matrices as to whether you social distance or you mask or not mask or what have you. And so a popular one that's out there right now, and I know that it's being considered in the region, and has, I think, been implemented already over in another county, is having community transmission versus, so on the x-axis and on the y-axis would be the community vaccination rate. We looked at that, did not feel that that was going to be a fruitful conversation. Whereas when we had been hearing what would the vaccination rates be if you're going to take that route of non-masking, what are the suggestions? And they said, about a 70 to 80% within the community vaccination rate. You saw it earlier, we're quite far from that. So again, our charge was to look locally at what made sense for our community. So the committee came, if you want to go to the next slide, the committee came up with this matrix right here. And with the idea of COVID being an illness, that there are a lot of illnesses that our children and adults are exposed to, that a lot of the data would suggest that the age group that is within our school setting, not necessarily our teachers' age group, but again, we have had the vaccines and so forth out there for quite some time, and that protection is there. That in the green area right there on the left, once again on the y-axis, you would have the level of community transmission. So we're using the county. You could use a smaller area if you wanted to, or you could go with the greater Monadnock region, which incorporates a couple other communities. But we used Cheshire County for last year for this purpose. And then up top, we said, let's look at our school data. What's happening at our schools? What's been our past practice? Meaning what's the data say has gone on in the past? Last year, we had a lot of protocols in place. We did have masking going on quite a bit, certainly all year long within the building. And then it shifted back and forth when we were outside, different athletic events and so forth. The recommendation is that we do not mask outside. There's not one time here in this matrix where that is suggested that we would not be masking during athletic events or anything of that nature. That being said, we've always, even last year when there were some times like if it was required, if NHIAA was saying you're in the playoffs, you need to wear a mask, we didn't want to disqualify our learners from being able to compete. So, we do have some things that we have to consider, but that would be, the indoor seasons are a little ways away. And I think that part of my suggestion tonight is that we revisit this on at least a quarterly basis as things change. And we saw last year things changed consistently. So green would be in that low area. And so what does that mean? So if we have between 0 and 10% of the population out of a school, that's what that low area would be. Now, understanding that last year and also understanding that we did have masks. And so, a lot of the adults, if you were to talk to them, said, listen, we didn't get sick. This was great. I didn't get my usual flu or anything of that nature because we were washing our hands more. So let's not discount washing our hands. And we were, I think, conscious of everyone around us and just of being cleanly and taking care of ourselves. So there are a lot of factors there that it would be hard to pinpoint what worked best, probably just a combination. But we really didn't have many days throughout the year where we actually hit 10% of any sort of absentee due to illness. Now, we had more than 10% out last year at a time, because if we did have a situation where someone was COVID positive, then if there was a contact tracing situation, that was usually the bulk of the individuals who were out. We had a lot of contact tracing. We followed the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services guidance on that. Our nurses did a fantastic job. Wasn't always comfortable for anyone involved, but they did what they were supposed to do. And there were no cases where our learners who were out for contact tracing got it from that situation. So there were, I think, 2 days, maybe 3, where we hit 12% in one of the schools. But so we would have been, according to this, in the moderate zone. We haven't had a 20% substantial outing since that one time in, I think, Ringe Memorial School was the school where we had that. And I think at Jaffrey Grade School, we probably were at that 15% during that time frame. Wasn't quite as high. And so looking at just illnesses in general, because the goal, again, of the committee was that we need kids in school. We need them to be learning, and we want them here. They need to be in attendance. So what causes a lot of not being in attendance? Illness. And so that could be the flu. It could be COVID. It could be a cold, a bad cold. It could be strep that goes around, whatever. For whatever reason, we can keep that data on being absent due to illness and categorize that altogether. And so what we would say is that when we're in the green zone, masking would be optional. Social distancing would not be required. If we're in the yellow zone, masking is recommended. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. Social distancing is required indoors. Social distancing defined this year would be 3 feet, not 6 feet. You can still do group work in a 3-foot area. Masking recommended still means it's optional. But what you would be getting communication from the school saying, all right, we've switched here. It's recommended. That means that something is causing it to go, whether it be community transmission or whether, hey, we have 10 to 15% of individuals out due to illness. This is important to note that what we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to break that pattern and not get into that red category, but we're not going to force you at this point in time to do that. It's recommended that that would be the case. Anytime we're in the yellow, you can guarantee that around other people, I'll be wearing the mask. That's something that I would do if we're recommending it is coming. If this is something that the board approves or something like this, then certainly I would follow that recommendation, but that does not make anyone have to follow that recommendation. Except if there were times where social distancing, because it says where social distancing is required indoors, if there were a time where social distancing was not able to be required indoors, then masking would be there. But we would have some masks to be able to provide to students. I just ordered a ton of them that they had left over from last year at the State Department, I think 20,000 or so. So we have quite a few. Substantial really only occurs, it doesn't look so much at the community, the minimal, the moderate, the substantial. I think we found out last year that though that's good data, it's important. We also noted that we came back to school with very few problems last year, and we were well into that red category. And so, and we were very successful here. So community transmission doesn't always match what's going on in your local community and in your schools. So what we do know and what we can say is that if we have illness, whatever that illness might be, and it's going through our school, we need to stop that. And so what we would do would be that there would be masking during that time that would be required. You want to stop the pattern and replace it. So you start with that for about 5 days. Basically, you do it for 5 days. You take a look. Hopefully you've had in that 5 days, 2 or 3 days of a downward spiral, and then you go back to your moderate state. If we had this matrix last year, we would never have hit that red category. We would have hit moderate on a handful of days. Some language to go along with the matrix that the group kind of talked about, the committee, was that the attendance or illness data, so attendance due to illness or absenteeism due to illness, we could record that and have it in a spreadsheet and put on our website around the 2 o'clock time, give or take 15 minutes. Easier to do at this school. Sometimes the elementary school, because they start a little bit later, takes a little more time, but around 2 o'clock, we would be able to give that information to let people know. If or when we enter a new phase of the matrix, the school district would communicate the change. The change will be in place for at least 5 calendar days, as it is at least from the when you hit red. So that's not as clear as I think it needs to be. You can be in the moderate zone for 20 days because that's where you are because of the community transmission. But if you get into that red zone, that's almost purely due to your school, and that doesn't mean district, it could be just a school. So a school population, and you would then be in that zone for about 5 days, and then the principal, the nurse, they'd consult with myself and let me know what would be the best solution based upon the data. They could extend it a couple days if need be, just to make sure, or say, hey, we're all set to go back. Another think there was a difference in conversation about elementary school and the middle high, because the elementary learners are by and large in the same cohort, the same group for their day. That if there was an outbreak, and they're defining that as 40%, if the board said, no, an outbreak's at 20, or it's at 30, or it's at 50, or whatever like that, then the principal and the nurse would consult and talk about what to do there. They could mandate some masking or other measures during that time frame. Recommended versus optional, I talked about that a little bit already. Recommended is still optional, except that it's letting you know that, depending on the reason for recommended, it could be that our sickness or illness numbers inside the school are increasing, and you always want to stop a pattern by starting a new pattern, and so you got to break that pattern and try to go in the reverse, and so that's the idea of that. So the suggested changes that I have is, I think that the committee did some nice work. I think they took into consideration a lot of different points of view. I think they made the most important thing from an educational standpoint, the most important thing about keeping kids in school, and making that important. And what does take kids out of school is illness. So stopping spread of illness. But also understanding that the data out there, although the couple peer-reviewed documents that I read, when we talk about the Delta variant, again, Lambda isn't known as much yet, is more contagious, much more contagious than even the prior one, and certainly much more contagious than the flu by a long shot. I haven't come across data, and if you have, please let me know. I haven't come across data that showed that just because increase in getting it would has made for necessarily an increase in that younger population of severity. And so the matrix that we looked, or the little grid that I gave last time, was like, let's look at the probability of someone getting ill. I think that the probability could be higher, certainly, if the information that is provided about the Delta variant is definitely, that it is spreading faster, mostly among the unvaccinated. We would have a very large unvaccinated population of individuals. But then, so there's a high probability, I think, that would be the case, that people would get ill. What's against it? What is the severity? What's the severity that a 5-year-old is going to be hospitalized or worse? And so that data does not appear to be any higher than it was in the previous situation. More contagious is what it appears to be. Again, information will come in, more data will come in, and I think that as that happens, we have to reevaluate. I think we need to add mandatory mask wearing on the school buses for our document. I've had a conversation with the bus owner already. He knows that came down from the state. Add language that would allow outside organizations to use the facility, as long, with caveat that they're responsible for the cleanliness of it. And I think that the matrix that they put forward is reasonable. I think it uses local data. And I think it's something that is even transferable beyond COVID. That's the end of this.
Okay.
Yep, presentation.
All right. So as promised, we're going to do some public comments, but leading up to that, I first of all want to say to folks here in the audience, as well as those who are remote, that first of all, thanks very much for your engagement. We really appreciate people coming out to the meetings and being aware of our process. That's important. Also, as was stated earlier, we got several emails over the past 2 weeks. Here they are, printed out. And we want to hear as many voice as we can, maybe not actually their voice, but being here or speaking. So I asked that if you sent us an email, that you give other people opportunity to talk so that we get as much input as we can in this discussion. Your voice has been heard. We've all read them. We've read articles, gone to links, watched videos. We've done that homework. So if you would please respect that we want to get as many people as we can. And so we have the list of who's written to us. And we ask that you listen as we will to the other voices as well. So, are there other things or does that cover it, guys? That's, yep. And then there's the obvious, public comment policy stuff, saying your name, town. Leaving time for other people. So we're going to ask people to maybe just speak for a minute or two. So that again, we can get voices in. We'll give probably like 10 minutes of people who want to talk about what's just been presented, maybe some pros for 10 minutes, cons for 10 minutes, something like that. I'll keep track of the time and we'll take it from there. Anything else, Nick, that needs to be said in terms of the policy?
I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, obviously, Marcia laid out kind of the rules for how we're going to run it in terms of a breakdown. Again, just, this, it's up on the screen, the policy, just make sure you read it, understand it before you make the comment. First, last name, town of residence is important for me, just so that I can record your name in the record for the minutes. So do we want to start in person? Do we want to start remote? Would we like to alternate? What's the preferred?
Let's do a couple in person and then check a couple remote. Let's just kind of bounce back and forth so that we give, I don't want our 10 minutes to be taken up with just one versus the other. So to be fair.
So you'll be able to be both projected and be heard by those folks that are digital tonight.
Okay, so we'll start the 10 minutes of people who may want to speak in favor of something that they heard in this proposal. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Rob Chamberlain, resident of Ringe and father. I just had a couple quick questions. One is, again, I know we kind of went over it, but I'm wondering if you can clarify what an outbreak is. So for instance, I have 3 young children. They have the sniffles. I feel like every day somebody has a runny nose. So if, one of them has a runny nose, obviously, I'm assuming like last year, we'd have to pull her out. She'd probably have to get a COVID test. And then is that going to go toward the outbreak number for that day? And then how long is the outbreak number going to be enforced? Is it going to be just a constant mask every day because we have 20 kids out here and 15 kids here when really they're 5 and 7-year-olds? I mean, good luck keeping them 3 feet apart as well. I don't know how you're going to enforce that because I don't know if you've ever seen kids together. It's a jungle gym. So my question is really, I mean, how are you going to determine what an outbreak is?
Can we put the matrix back up, please?
Yeah, of course.
Well, that one's.
I don't know.
It's a clarifying question.
Basically, if a student is absent due to illness, then they would count in that percentages of individuals who are out. So if in a school you had 20% of the population and then climbing, that would be during that time frame. We'd enter the red. Again, last year, I think we hit 12% once in one of the schools, 10%, maybe a couple times. Mostly we averaged 4%, all the way through every day throughout the entire year. And so it doesn't necessarily mean COVID. It could be a lot of things. I mean, we do have in the document that we're asking people, if your learner is sick, if they have a fever, things like, please keep them home. That's going to help, even though, you might think, oh, that's adding to the numbers here of people who are ill. But when you send them into school and they're ill, that will spread, and so that number will escalate. We're still in conversations with our nurses and with New Hampshire DPHS. I don't think we'll be using all the same strategies that we were required to last year around contact tracing and so forth. So I still have to gain some clarity from the state epidemiologist, Dr. Chan, and from the DPHS. Again, I stated that we had done a lot of contact tracing last year, and we did not have any evidence of in-school transmission. So we have the idea was to let the comment within the committee, please, you were there, was let the nurses be nurses and use their professional judgment.
Perfect.
Yeah, and again, there was a meeting that was held recently, New Hampshire DPHS, that at least some of our nurses attended, and they did have some conversations around this idea of, contact tracing and some of these other things. So that, again, as to Ruben stated, that information is still kind of coming in. It does seem like on the whole, things may be a little, in some cases, they will be as, restricted. In other cases, things may be let back a little bit. Again, threshold for, illness may be the same, but some of the contact tracing efforts may not look as, stringent.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, I understand that if your kid has a fever, I mean, that's kind of you don't send your kid. I mean, I would hope people wouldn't do that just in general. I was doing this before it was cool. So, and so again, just kids, they always have sniffles. If my kid has a runny nose, I mean, do I not send them? It's like, why even have school then? Where's the line? Is it a fever? If it's a fever, then I mean, that's great. I mean, obviously, if your kid has a fever, don't send them, but where's the line? If my kid has a runny nose, do I got to shove a swab 3 feet into their nose? And I'm not being facetious, I'm being serious.
We understand that. Sorry, I want to just do a clarification here. Normally, we don't do a conversation. It's just your opportunity to express views. That one felt like a clarification for me, like, okay, back to the matrix. Let's just re-explain that one. But in general, we're not going to be having a back and forth conversation. Okay.
That being said, questions like that we can take as they're in the minutes, and we can do what we did last time, a frequently asked questions.
Yes,
And
we'll
be able to
post
get,
that.
and we get answers to those questions and post those. But the answer currently right now is, we want to have things as normal as possible, but we also need to make sure our nurses are following the guidelines that they're being provided. And so we'll know more within a week or so, I would say, when they're back.
Right, and check the website.
Max Giese, 31 Michael Drive, Ringe. This is just some clarification questions. I'd like to speak, when you open up for the next 10 minutes. The language, can you define the increases? You said on the chart that if there was an outbreak, 37% wanted increases in protocol. That's very vague. What are you talking about when you say increases? Because when you ask someone that, if you ask me, I'm going to say increased cleanings. Yes, let's make sure that we're cleaning more, sanitizing more. If you say mandatory masks, I'm going to say absolutely not. So can you define when you say increases, what does that mean?
So Nick, the original question that was asked, I believe put the number 1 was keep things as normal as possible. And then the 5 was keep things as we had last year. And so then there was everything in the middle, such as
If there's an
hand
outbreak.
washing, things of that nature. I don't think anyone thinks that hand washing should go away. But
I'm highly against it. Builds
all right, so
immunity.
we got one.
It builds immunity.
We found the one. But.
No,
so
I just,
it
I
was- it
think,
was on that spectrum.
right,
of
and we
people
filled out
saying-
the survey last year. We filled out the survey last year, and I thought it was very deceiving the way it was written so vaguely, because I signed off on increase, because I said, yes, let's absolutely, make sure that we are sanitizing and we're cleaning. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do. But like the gentleman right here said, when you're talking about elementary school kids and you expect them to social distance and properly wear a mask, I'm getting into the next 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. But the Delta variant, so the transmissibility is up, the severity of illness is down. The Lambda is actually, they're reporting that it's vaccine resistant, and it's a outbreak in Central and South America right now. If masks are required, are you going to then automatically offer distant learning?
We have no plans for doing distance learning. We would have no capacity.
Even with mandatory masks, you're not going to give parents the option for distance learning when you're telling them that their kids have to mask up?
The plan here would be to mask for a period of time.
No, but it doesn't matter if it's a day, 5 days. I'm just saying that right there, again, I'll pause and we'll address it in the next 10 minutes, but so no distance learning, even with mandatory
We
masks.
would not be having.
Okay, who decides that? Is there a vote on that? And is that something that can be voted on? Because I think there's a lot of people that are going to take issue with that.
The board can certainly vote and make a motion to do that sort of thing.
Okay. If the board's voting, are you going to open it up for a town vote for parents to actually have a say?
That's not how that works.
Okay,
So
but
it's
understand
communication
something.
to us.
How it works is the schools are not, our kids don't go there so that teachers are provided a job. The teachers have a
I
job
understand that.
to provide an education for our children.
That's right.
I pay a lot of taxes, and the lion's share of that goes to supporting the education system. Yet I pulled my son from the public school and paid extra on top, no refund on my taxes, because I said he will not wear a mask. And now you're telling me if I enroll him, that you're going to tell him he has to, and I have no option. I sincerely disagree with that, and I think a lot of people here are going to disagree with that. And I really think that's something you guys need to take up. But again, we're getting in the next 10 minutes. What's driving the policy? Is there any liability that's factored in with the policies?
You mean liabilities in terms of?
In the terms of, so for instance, other parts of the country, Greenville County school systems in South Carolina specifically, they don't have any mask policies, but they are having people sign waivers saying, look, we are not enforcing any mask mandates, but if your student, or if you, when you're on campus, were to contract COVID or anything else, that we are not taking responsibility. So I have to assume that policy has been driven by some sort of liability down there. I don't know if it's the same up here.
That hasn't been part of our conversation.
So would something that you had a waiver, would that do anything for the mandates?
I don't think the waiver has anything to do with what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So I'm really sorry, but I asked for like a person to do a question.
Yeah, no, but you know what? I'm speaking on behalf of 6 families that are on vacation in Tennessee right now. So they're texting me. I am their voice tonight. And I think that this discourse is good. And I think clarification on that is good. Just to say, well, you don't ask any questions.
No,
I'm
not-
sorry. I disagree with that,
I'm
but
not
I'll
saying
reserve my comments for the next 10 minutes.
That's fine. I'm just want to make sure I give other people who are remote the opportunity as well.
They're watching online and they're texting me.
Okay, well, I didn't know that until just now. Thanks. All right, so we've gotten a fair amount, but I do want to give those that are
Yeah, so we do have three
raising
people
hand.
remotely, if we wanted to start taking those one by one, and then we could go back to in person if you wanted. Is that what you want to do? Take a couple remote.
Yeah. please.
Okay. All right, so first we have Leslie.
Hi, this is Leslie McLean. I'm from Jaffrey. I have a question about the data being used in the matrix. Since the county has last year had really different rates than our two towns, is it wise to keep using the county level of transmission compared to the two town levels when we're building the matrix? And just to put this in context, I actually report that number every morning, so I'm volunteering to do more work myself. Right? But I would just like to consider that maybe the county level is too high of a level, since the county and the two towns were really out of sync last year. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Jen Clark.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Clark. I'm in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. I have 3 students in the school district. I have a high school student, a middle school student, and a grade school student. My concern at this time is 2 of my students are very high risk. My youngest, who is in the grade school, cannot possibly go back to school at this time because he is high risk and because he cannot get the vaccine as he is only 10 years old. There is, and this doesn't just apply to me. I've spoke to several parents and students in the school district. There is an entire group of students who have no option, cannot attend school, and there is no remote learning being offered for those students who cannot attend in person because it is medically impossible for them. Is the school going to even try to offer a remote to those students, or do we just have to go elsewhere to try to get them an education?
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate your comments. So we've done about 15 minutes. I had said 10. I just didn't know, do we want one more that's there, or should we
Right now we have 3 folks with their hands raised.
breathe? Okay. Kind of like, well, let's do. Yes, I recognize that. We'll get to the board. We're given, I'm just thinking, since you were representing several people, maybe give one more.
Just one more.
Yeah, whoever's top there.
All right, Judith Sullivan. Actually, Judith, I'm getting a message that says that you have an older version of Zoom that's not allowing me to allow you to make that comment. Do we want to move on to the next one for now?
Yeah.
So I have John.
Hi, this is actually Molly Ludlum, Ringe, New Hampshire.
Molly, didn't you send us an email?
I did. I just wanted to say something different than what I said in the email, though. My concern, as you read in my email, is that especially in elementary schools, kids are not eligible to get vaccinated. And as our governor has said, he recently changed his recommendation is to use face masks widely in schools in communities where COVID transmission is substantial, which Cheshire County is. But he still emphasizes the importance of vaccines. And so if we have a low vaccination rate and our kids are not even able to, I feel like we owe it to our children to keep them safe so they can be in school safely in person by doing the things that we have in our hands to do, such as social distancing and masking. And they did a great job last year and people stayed healthy. So I just want to commend you all for the great work you've done.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, let's do 15 minutes. And again, if we can keep our comments to 1 or 2 minutes, that way we can do both. And yes, unique ones, new ones that haven't been made. Okay. So, Penny, we'll start here in the room. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak or hasn't emailed.
My name is Sandra Rainey. I'm from Ringe. I have an issue with the masks on the bus. I spoke with somebody at the bus today, and they said that it's up to the district to make the decisions. I have family in New Ipswich who uses the same bus company, and that school is not requiring masks on the bus. These are buses with the kids that are going to school together to the same destination. They are not in a city with kids coming or people coming on and off and lots of activity. They're getting on the bus, sitting there, going to the school. I don't feel like that's something that should be required. If we're going into the schools and they're not mandatory, then why should they be mandatory on the bus? Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. So, sorry, do me a favor. If you're speaking for someone, just let us know who you're speaking for so we can record that as well.
Sure. Okay. So on Michael Drive, 34 Michael Drive, it's the Yahoo family. Their next door neighbor, that's the Kleins. And then on Scotts Lane, the Kettler family and the Sickler family, their next door neighbor. And at the end of Michael Drive, actually, I won't say they haven't texted me, so
Okay.
we're going to leave them out, but we had discussed it. They are on vacation and I believe they would share the sentiment, but I'm not going to share the name now.
Okay,
So
that helps.
I'm a veteran. I was in the military and then 8 years overseas as a contractor. A year and a half, I was in Afghanistan. And I'm watching the recent events as the Taliban is taking over Afghanistan. And I remember when I was over there, I used to play volleyball with the interpreters. And one of the interpreters was on his way back, to go see his family, and he got ran off the road and executed. And I was talking to the other interpreter. I said, wow, is it scary? And he said, oh, well, if they find out that we're working with the US troops, they're going to murder us. And I said, man, it's wild. It's like, so is, you love your country. And he pulled out a picture of a beautiful little Afghani girl. And he said, Max, that's why I do it. He said, I don't want her to grow up under the Taliban. I don't want her to have to cover. I want her to be able to go to school. I want her to be able to do what she wants to do. And under the Taliban, women can't go to school. They have to have a male escort to leave the house. Kids sick, too bad. You better stay home until you get a male escort. It is it's terrorism. They are living in fear. And I thank God that I don't live over there. But then I look at what we're doing to our kids with these mandatory mask mandates. You all are the Taliban if you enforce a mandatory mask mandate on my son. My son will not live in fear. We are not a nation of fear. We're not a nation of cowards. If someone wants to wear a mask, wear two. If you want to wear a shield with it, please, by all means do. We all have to take responsibility for our own health. And I know you don't wear it for, you're not wearing it for yourself, you're wearing it for me. They don't. It's got a mortality rate of 0.002. Much more likely for a child to drown, get killed in a car accident. There were 480 deaths in the 18-19 flu season, and there was less than that in the year and a half since COVID started. But yet we're putting our children through this? Enough's enough. My kid will not be subjected to it. If I put him back in the Ringe school, he will not have to wear one. If you come out and say it's mandatory, then he's going to stay home and he deserves to still have an education. I'm paying good money and you guys are, you are failing us who want an option. You're failing us. There has to be an option. You cannot just sit there and mandate that my son has to go through that. Our kids should not be living in fear. They should not be forced to mask up. This thing is not dangerous for kids. Every teacher has had an opportunity to get vaccinated. If the vaccination, and that's dropping, it was 90% effective. Now the latest one is it's 42% effective. The CDC has been wrong about everything. From day one, they're 0 for 10. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then look what happened. Get vaccinated and you ain't gonna have to wear masks. Oh no, you vax up, mask up, lockdowns. This is America. We should still be free. And you all want to sit here and tell our kids that they have to live in fear? It's unacceptable. And if you all do that to our children and you force them to go through that, what kind of psychological impact is that? It is going to have a detrimental effect. And you all, it'll be the Ringe Jaffrey Taliban, what you guys are doing. Stop it.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else that has something that they want to say that hasn't been said or they haven't emailed us that's in this room? Make it quick, Gwen.
I'm Gwenna Keteleff from Ringe. I just go with Sandra's no mask on the bus, especially for our athletes going into sports season. They're playing together. They're going, I mean, they're with each other nonstop. And the little kids, they're with each, like she said, with each other. No masks on the bus. New Ipswich are not requiring they're using community transportation.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Nick?
Yeah, so we have 4 people.
Okay.
All right, so first we have Megan.
Hi, my name is Megan Caruana. I live in Ringe and I have a daughter entering kindergarten at RMS. And I'd like to third the bus comment, but also I'd like to just make a comment about the matrix and the fact that you guys are planning on using general sickness as the lever for percent for, changing from low to moderate to substantial. And I feel like that's kind of a dangerous thing to do. Shouldn't it be more focused on COVID in general, if that's what you're going to be using as a matrix? With more kids, I'm assuming going back to the district as opposed to last year. And like we talked about earlier, there being a whole basket of different illnesses that they could have. Why are we focusing on illness in general and not just the COVID numbers in the schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And Nick, you've got that question, right? So that we can
Yep.
put it in our frequently asked.
All right, now we have Allison. Allison, I'm also getting a message from you saying that you have an older version of Zoom and that it needs to be updated. I apologize. Shauna.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Shauna, okay, Shauna Smith, Ringe, New Hampshire. I do want to thank the school board and the committee for all of their hard work in putting these protocols in place. It's certainly a hard job, but thinking about these things keeps our community safe. One thing that I've learned from this school year is that kids are resilient, and seeing it firsthand, I was super proud of our kids in our school this year who followed protocols and did a great job. One reason why we were able to stay in person was because we had these protocols in place. The goal for my kids is that they do stay in person. And one thing that I worry about is if we don't have protocols in place and our numbers go into substantial, to me, that's a worse effect for kids, is to then have to stay home and go remote again, which none of us want to do. And it doesn't seem, we don't have to go there again if we have protocols in place. So I know it's a super hard issue for everyone, but I've seen it firsthand that kids are totally capable of following protocols, even if it's not necessarily what everyone wants to do in order to keep the community safe. That's one thing that I teach my kids, is it's not just about what we want. It's not about what our family wants. It's also about what's best for the community and people outside of the school as well. So I just wanted to thank you guys for all your hard work and thinking of everyone in different situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. And we have one more there, Nick.
We have had more people add, but there is one from the original list.
Okay, because we've only got a couple minutes left. And we'll give the board time to discuss things.
So the next one would be Rachel.
Rachel?
Hi, actually it's Megan for listening. I live in Ringe. So I personally, I want to say that the matrix in itself, it takes a lot of work, and I do appreciate the work that was done for it. However, putting on here in yellow recommended masking, there's no difference in recommended and optional. And the only thing, as you said, is you're going to notify us that we're now in yellow. So it seems a little bit of a smoke screen to appease, which is a little bit frustrating and condescending, I think. But I would like to say that it was mentioned that we never quite made it, I don't think, to yellow last year, but we were masking. I don't know that I want to see masking from the beginning. I wouldn't be opposed to it, and I can very much, make that decision for myself as well. But I do think that once we hit that moderate, it should be masks. I would also like to agree with whoever said something earlier that it should definitely be based on COVID numbers. I don't think it's fair for kids that are out with the cold to be added into this list, but I do think that it should also include the staff, because whenever they're out, we're going to run into problems as well. So those are the things that I wanted to say.
Thank you, Megan, for your input. We have 1 minute. So
All right, so one more.
if we have one more.
All right, we're going to do one more public comment from our online viewers, George Q.
Oh, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to run over a couple of things. And I fall into the no mask for any condition, anytime. There's no data that suggests it's effective. There's never been any data shows it's effective. But a couple of stats from the CDC that I was looking at, they're a couple months old. 5 to 14-year-old children, per 100,000 children, the death rate, which is the morbid topic, but ultimately that's what we're talking about. Cancer is 2.1 per 100,000. Drowning, 0.5. Cardiovascular, 0.6. Homicide, 0.7. Suffocation, 0.2. COVID, 0.2. we're not addressing anything else, any of those other things, but we're adding the psychological torture of forcing kids to cover their countenance at their youngest development periods, right? We interact with humans. We need to see each other smile. We need to evaluate each other's expression to see who we are and develop as people. This separates the kids. They're not a high-risk population. Another thing to note is there are some folks I know that are of the baby boomer generation who I've heard for decades of my life talk about, when I was a kid, they had us hide under our desks because the nuclear bomb was coming. Here's the nuclear bomb, and we're hiding under kindling, but the nuclear bomb is coming. I'm sorry, what's being done to our kids now is 1,000 times worse, if not more. It's exponentially, horrifically worse. You're telling them, put the mask on because the air is deadly. And watch out, you might be killing grandma because you don't know that you're sick because the air is deadly. And don't go home. Don't go home. Scrub everything up. Take care of everything. Put on 2 masks, which don't work because the air is deadly, right? Personally, and excuse me, I'm not being vulgar here, but I'll wear underpants and jeans. People may wear masks, and I pass gas. Sorry for the vulgarity again. You smell the gas. You don't think we're getting the virus in there? We can't base these numbers on fear, which is what is being done. Cases, not deaths. We're talking about cases.
All right, thank you, George. For your input.
Could I get your last name, George?
Oh, sorry, am I back unmuted?
No, you're still here.
Am I muted?
No, you're still here.
Ah, beautiful. Sorry, it's George Q. George Quill, Ringe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so board. It's our turn to discuss this. So I don't know if we want to first kind of go in a systematic way, or if people just want to kind of raise your hand and.
I did have a question.
Okay.
So Leslie brought up a good point in terms of Jaffrey and Ringe and keeping it local, and that's what our state has recommended, that we make the local decisions, and that's what we're doing, and we're listening and doing that. And I'm wondering how easy it is to get the data daily, if she's saying that she's reporting out the data for the school district, just for Jaffrey and Ringe, and what that data looks like. If it's vaccination rates, I'm going to guess are gonna go that much higher. I mean, if it's, and there's questions as to whether it's vaccination rates of the entire population of each town or the available people who could be vaccinated. So there's some question in terms of what the end number is, what's the number. So my question would be, is that a consideration we could adjust for the opening framework? And the other is, so far we haven't heard I haven't heard that many hospitalizations in this time period, June to now, of children. And so it makes it hard, because if you haven't heard it, you're not, where are we going to get that number from locally? And is the state reporting it widely if there are hospitalizations under the age of 18? So that matters as far as the right-hand side. I will say I'm personally in favor of the green and yellow. I believe that we should be optional now. I actually do think a recommendation is a little bit of a extra, like just saying, things are getting hotter. For those of you who are interested in wearing masks, now might be a time if you'd like to do that. Not everyone, if you want to, again. The other is, I think with the red, I have to agree, having absolutely no plan for remote does make me wonder how we address that. So it's hard to predict. In this time period, this is what the framework is. We changed the framework all the way through last year, and that was okay. Like we adjusted and we adjusted. But I think that's something we have to kind of map out a bit farther down. Maybe we go through 3 months, 4 months with it green, and then it's yellow for a month. You know, maybe we're discussing, maybe the concerns about all masking is something that's not even gonna happen. Like we talked about 20%. We've never hit 20%. The odds are not that high that we're gonna hit. 20%.
2 years ago or 3 years
Right,
ago. when we
yeah,
had the
so
flu.
we're, I mean, it's not, we have not said, I have not said anything about requiring masks. So I respectfully, I don't appreciate being threatened as a terrorist myself, because I didn't say.
I didn't say you did. I said if you did. Big difference. Big difference.
Well, thanks for the vote of confidence that we might
If
be.
you murder someone, you murder. I don't think you're murder someone. But if you do, if you murder.
That's true. And I'm also an angel and a wonderful person, and I give
I
to my
believe you,
community all the
Patricia,
time.
I think you insulted you. And I don't think you're gonna vote in favor of making all of this.
Probably not today, because they wouldn't be wearing them today if I vote for this framework.
No, but without, as you just said, without a backup to that, it should be a no. It should be.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop your conversation because we're not supposed to have.
Sorry.
Sorry,
conversations.
that's right. We're
I
not.
apologize. Marcia.
Unfinished.
I have a question.
Did you have a question?
That's my question.
Okay, sorry, Alicia.
So several people made points about the busing, and I appreciate your points. From the way I understood it, that was a federal mandate, but now I'm curious hearing that other school districts are not proceeding in that manner. So I guess I'd like to have a little bit more information about whether it is something we have to do, and if not, how other districts are.
Yeah, we were informed by the state epidemiologist that it was a order for all public transportation, which included the school buses as well. There was a CDC order for back in January, and I don't believe that order has been lifted.
Okay. Right.
Other questions? Yes, Lisa.
I have two pieces. Could we go back to the frame of the language to go along with the matrix, please? In the section where I just have a recommendation on the third paragraph, where it says be required to social distance and or mask, I'd like to remove the or. If we have 40% learners out of a classroom, they need to mask and social distance. It shouldn't be an or. If it could, the language maybe could say social distance and mask required until the class attendance is above 60%.
Okay. Other questions or comments at this point?
I have a whole long list.
Yeah, okay, well,
But
start.
I'll start with,
So we're talking about in the classrooms. If we get to the red level, masks will be mandatory. But if we have indoor sports, volleyball, basketball, masks will not be mandatory, even if we're at the red level. So that's a question I'd like to have addressed, because it seems inconsistent. And I know that we're not always the ones who make the masking rule for the sports, but it seems that we're saying that kids have to wear masks in school and then they're playing an indoor sport. Shouldn't they have to wear a mask?
And I believe that the reopening framework said that that's up to the governing body, the NHIAA,
Okay,
relative to sports and that,
all right, so that's not us, that's them. Okay, yeah.
I believe.
I think the idea was to follow the framework across the board for
Okay.
indoors and for outdoors. Outdoors. No masking, even if we
Even if we're
have
in the red.
illness,
Higher.
yeah.
Mhm. So it's been a conversation that's come up, and I guess and I heard Ruben, I heard you talk about this a little bit, but if someone is tested, if a learner or a teacher tests positive for COVID, how long are they in quarantine? At one point last year, it was 10 days. I believe it was shortened. Do we still anticipate that to be a student or a teacher would be in quarantine for 5 days if they test positive?
Yeah, I have to get the updated information on that, but I do believe it has been shortened.
And a big concern, obviously, in the room is the lack of option for remote, and because we have not prepared for remote learning, but there is a cost to offering it. Do we have the funds available to offer remote learning? And it would basically be at every grade level.
Do you mean, so your question is
Could we pull it off?
from the beginning of the school year at every grade level to have someone?
No,
be-
from
If it
going
goes-
forward, from September, if parents didn't want, if we went to 5 days of masks and parents didn't want their kids in school, or if parents just didn't feel comfortable and they with sending their kids to school because they're in grade school and not enough people are vaccinated and they were hoping for a remote option. That was one of the questions that came up. Is that even something that is possible for our school district to offer financially at this point, or in terms of
We do
teachers?
not have the budget for that. If you were going to consider remote during a time of red
Mhm.
on that matrix, the easiest thing to do would be to go completely remote.
So if we went red, it would be, rather than trying to say, well, some people, and here's an option and that. Easier to say red remote. Is that what you're saying?
If
Not,
yeah, so I'm not recommending.
not
that.
easy.
And I don't think
But-
the committee was recommending that because that
No.
was the exact opposite of
Of-
why they were
yeah.
doing what they were doing and suggesting. what
About
they were
getting
suggesting.
kids,
Exactly.
keeping kids in school.
So, yeah, we would not have, I mean, we wouldn't even have the,
The manpower to do it.
no.
No. All right. John?
Yeah, I'm concerned for those people who will not be willing to send their children when there's not masking required. To me, it's basically a question of good public health. And I'm not a public health professional or a doctor, but I've got to trust the American Pediatric Association and the CDC when they say that we should be masking our kids. Now, in this community, there's a couple of things going on. One is our vaccination rates are real low in both towns. But on the other hand, it's also true that a lot of people are against having their children wear masks. So understand that. And I think we're all reacting to that. I personally think 20% is way too high to require masks. And I'm very impressed by how our kids did last year. They wore masks all year. Now, I know a lot of people didn't send their kids, but most people did, and the kids did well. They attended class, they even played sports without their masks on. They did pretty well too. With their mask on, sorry, they played sports with their mask on. So, well, I understand the concerns and I respect them. But I think that 20% threshold, when we didn't even hit 20% last year once, I think it's way too high. And I think people who are going to be impacted are those who have children who maybe have some kind of health issue. And they're afraid to send their kids knowing that no one else is masked. So that, I'm concerned by that.
Right, thank you, John. Charlie.
I'm concerned about everything. I think we have an obligation to educate our children on one hand and provide them a safe environment on the other. And it's a balance. And so what we have to do is look at the risk associated with safety, because you can go all the way from trying to have 100% safety to the mitigating the exposure risk to not doing anything at all. With education, you can say, okay, we can have in-person, which is the best education we can provide, or we can go remote, which is something less, or we can say, well, if you're sick, stay home and figure it out yourself. So there are varying degrees, and I think that what we need to do is try to find what fits for our community, for our schools, for our parents, our students, our stakeholders. So having said that, I think there were some good questions that were asked, and I think we ought to go away and look at them. I do think that we need to look at, why are we talking about general illness rather than COVID? There must be reasons for it. And if it's not practical to use COVID on a daily basis, then maybe we have to use general illness. And then are those the right numbers? We have to look at remote learning and see if there are ways that we could provide remote learning, even though it's not in the budget. Because, for example, if you reach a 20% level in a school, you got 70% of your students out. You're saying you're going to mask everybody. Well, you have to ask yourself a question: what's going to happen with 70% of your students out? There should be some way of providing some remote training to them. If the teaching workload in the school is diminished by 70 students, we might have resources available in the school to do some remote learning. So I think it's something that we should be looking at. I've heard a lot about masks and no masks, and I've seen enough YouTubes and I've read enough references from all kinds of different perspectives. But I think that with this framework, we've got to start. And that's what I'm saying is a start, because school is going to start before our next board meeting. So, and what this tells me is that school is going to start without masks as a requirement. And we do have some open questions. And so from my perspective, I would say, let's start school without masks, as we've stated in the framework. And then during the next couple of weeks, work on some of these open questions and open issues and see what we can do to resolve them. Because even if we can't resolve it, at least we should have a good answer for our stakeholders in terms of why we can't do that. If someone says, well, no, I won't send my child to school wearing a mask. Well, what are the alternatives? Can we provide alternatives? And what are the different ways we can do things? Doesn't necessarily have to be remote. I mean, you can have remote learning packages. I know that when we have kids out that are ill, even if their threshold isn't reached, the teachers reach out to them and provide them with materials, provide them with makeup work, provide them with an opportunity to not miss that much when they're not in school. So I think that there are mitigation factors for the learning aspect of it, and there are mitigation factors for the transmission aspect of it. I think it's a good start. I would be willing to support it as an initial stab is what we need to do. And we do have some open questions, and I think we need to address those questions as best we can. And even if we can't provide the solution that people absolutely want, we can at least explain what would be needed if we were to do that and why we can't do it. On the other hand, we may be able to find ways of doing it, because necessity is the mother of invention. And if we have a need to do it, then often we can figure out a way of doing it. So I guess that's where I'm at.
I told you I had a list of questions. But
Christine.
Charlie, you said something and it reminded me of one of the questions that came up, one of the comments that came up was about the sniffles. Now, I have a learner in grade school and he's prone to horrible headaches. And so there were quite a few days when he got sent home from school because that triggered the COVID protocol. Later, and I brought him home, I got him tested, it came back negative. Later in the year, I believe I remember this correctly, the school nurse had a rapid test and she was able to do the test right there. Do we have that availability to do rapid tests in the school this year? So that if someone has the sniffles, we can say, it's not COVID, maybe you should go home. You know, maybe if you have a fever, you should go home. But do we have rapid tests? Do we have enough rapid tests?
We do not have those.
We do not have them. I would like to make 2 recommendations if you want to take a break between your long list. No, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
During
You'll
the
think
end.
of more in a minute.
The first recommendation I would like to make is that the framework committee that worked very hard to put this together and worked last year very hard, continue to meet quarterly to review and present recommendations to us. And that be a very planned, intentional time frame. So we could even see, you know, maybe they can email and let us know the dates that they'll be meeting. Definitely before we go for winter breaks kind of thing, you know, definitely November, that'd be great. And it'd be wonderful at that point, we'll have gone through the first quarter or trimester to kind of see what are the effects of grades so far? What are we, you know, having an academic piece of that would be really nice. You know, what is the impact, both as far as health in our community, but also academically. The second recommendation I would like to make has to do with numerous of this, and I wasn't, I originally wasn't a fan of this idea, but now I'm getting more and more, much more so. I'd like to recommend that the administration of the schools create a remote learning plan for all grades in case of substantial absence. And I'd like to recommend that that plan be created within the next 4 weeks. So have a deadline for saying, we're going to work with the administration, will work with their faculty and staff and put together a remote learning plan for cases of substantial absence. And the reason I want it, that I would recommend it, not for just across the board, is that Hvac has completely revamped their program due to COVID. They have put a ton of money and resources into it. They now cover full classes, young elementary through high school and college. They are completely open. They are enrolling now. They last year, I know it got really full quickly. They have really revamped their stuff, and Hvac is a very quality option for those families who really feel like COVID is in such a state that they cannot bring their kids to school. They cannot be in person, and this is a very real thing for them. Hvac is a very good, you know, accredited option for them. So I don't believe that we should be offering remote learning full year for any students. And I believe that if there's any substantial cases where kids know that they're going to be out for 2 weeks, our teachers should have a plan, or our district should have a plan. Maybe there should be designated people, not the classroom teachers, but designated people who are taking over the 3rd grade. Everybody, you know, I don't know, you know, that really should be an administrative thing. And it seems like giving a month notice would be enough for them to work together to create that.
So I guess I agree with Charlie. I would support this matrix. I think it's a good solution for all of our stakeholders. I wanted to point out a couple things about our remote learning plan. I'm hoping that not a remote learning plan, a reopening framework, I'm sorry. I hope Lisa's idea in my head. Is remote learning, outdoor learning, remaining a part of that framework. I'm hoping that it is, because that's just a great thing for children, especially in elementary school. So is that staying in that framework?
We encourage outdoor learning, absolutely. So the elementary schools will be the ones using the tents most. We purchased those last time. So
And
they're-
those will be back out.
some of
and
them are
ready to
already
go?
up and have
Okay.
been, but maybe some more will be put into place. And we will talk with the school. They used it a lot, a lot less. We also have, as a result of some at JGS, for instance, there was a teacher or two who did all of their learning all year long
Mhm.
outdoors, just about, with the exception of math.
Yes.
um,
Very
Because of the need for technology during the time frame. So we are developing an MOU with the outside learning area that they had for the organization to be able to make sure that that can happen again. I think that might broaden. We do have areas at RMS actually right on site that we have identified to, not at this point in time, because we have a lot of construction going on, but we do have the ability to develop outdoor classrooms and learning areas, whereas JGS doesn't have that land.
Right.
So our teachers have been very good about making partnerships within the community to make sure that they can utilize that. So, and that went very well. And we're going to be looking at the data to see how outdoor learning impacted their learning versus perhaps in years past with that same teacher,
Awesome.
or looking at that group in years past.
Okay. I do think there's a lot of worth in Lisa's point to reevaluate this plan as well. I think another consideration that will be impetus for reevaluation would be at whatever point in time elementary age children are able to be vaccinated. So that's something that could certainly cause a shift, I guess, in this plan. So I guess add that to the FAQ or list of things to do. And then I also just wanted to take a moment to highlight that we've received word that lunches and breakfasts will be provided for all children again this year at no cost to families. So that was a part of our reopening last year and it's happening again. So very exciting. You don't have to worry about packing lunch. I'm excited about it.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
I do think this busing thing is a conundrum because even before school starts, the teams are going to be busing. They're busing this Sunday, they're busing to Saturday. And I think it's going to be an issue if there's any concerns about compliance. I guess it's hard. Like, I don't know, how do you do that? Coaches need to know what the is and so that's starting soon.
Sorry. So did you have more?
No, this whole thing is a lot.
Yeah. We knew when to be elected.
Once.
I do think there is real value in clarifying the, I guess, the severity of illnesses. So I work in a preschool and we have different ways of dealing with that with kiddos. And I think that might be something that would be helpful for families. I know myself as a parent especially would like to have a better understanding of that, what that looks like. And I think there may be things that we can do to both clarify that and make the process a little bit more seamless. So.
Okay. This side, any other comments, questions? You got your list.
Well, if
you want to know.
I am also in favor of, if it's feasible, to have our community illness numbers reflect Jaffrey Range and not necessarily adding Keene and the rest of the county. Obviously, this is for some people a very frightening disease, and we want to use accurate data so that there's not confusion in households that, all those numbers are in Keene. Maybe, Jaffrey Range is fine. That's just all in Keene. But if we could have those numbers reflect what's happening in our school district community, it might keep us in the yellow longer. And it might provide some reassurance to households.
It might put you in the red a lot sooner.
You think it would put us in red
It's
sooner
possible.
because
Could
our
go either way.
vaccination numbers are so low?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Also, right now, I think that they're updating it on a weekly basis rather than a daily basis. I know last year they were doing it on a daily basis. Right now, I think it's a weekly. That's why when he put up there and he said, I pulled this today, but it could be last week's numbers. And I said, no, I checked Friday and these are different. So that is this week's, but it's by week right now rather than daily, whereas
But WMUR, what they post, isn't that daily?
I was looking at the
Based on-
WMURs.
It's not a couple days.
So
Well, they
just to
don't-
kind of give
they
you
sort
an
of-
idea, although again, for this matrix, the red really only takes place when you have absenteeism due to illness.
Right.
So it doesn't do anything for your community transmission that way. But if we have 19 as of today, if we have 19 cases in 2 towns, the 2 towns are, I mean, it's fine to do this. It's just a little bit harder because to get the data on a regular basis, like you said. But so, you know, all these cases are per 100,000. So if you look at Keene was 26 today, right? So 26, I think Swansea was 18 or 16, one of those. Keene was 26, they have roughly 23,000 individuals. So the ratio of that versus 19 to our approximately 11,500 in this shows us being in a higher spot. So it's fine if you want to provide information like that. It's a little more work. I'm not sure that we found a whole lot of value, as much value in the community information last year when push came to shove.
Just so I can clarify real quick for you, as far as the reporting of cases, WMURs, June 5th, 2021, the Hampshire officials will no longer provide data COVID-19 updates on weekends. We report those numbers on Monday. The page is updated Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
Okay, thank you. Misunderstood it. I thought it was just on Mondays, not Monday through Friday. That was just on Monday for the week.
So
Okay.
it's a fairly simple calculation. You just pop in a spreadsheet with a formula.
Yes.
So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we've completely overhauled the HVAC systems in the last
And still-
12 months. I mean, from last June until now, just so much has been done to clean the air and it continues, like it just continues to, and things are, the facilities committee has done an amazing job. I did just join it, so no quote there for me, but I think that's like, there's that, I mean, there's other questions. So like the cleaning, we have unbelievable protocols for cleaning now in terms of our janitorial staff and extra cleaning staff. It would be helpful to know if, you know, on the teacher side, like, are the teachers cleaning desks anymore? Like, are the students passing in the hallway the same? Like, there's probably sort of edits, right? We're not doing the screening in the morning. Like, we're not doing pet patrol. Is it pet patrol? No.
Pickup patrol.
Pickup patrol. That was a little dog. So
Not Paw
Pet
Patrol.
Paw Patrol. But we're not doing that. We just save 5 minutes every day. But there seems to be things that we're not doing because we're ahead in some ways, like with HVAC and other pieces that are in the plus comment, like in the, we're doing better off at this point on that. But I don't think we're mentioning it, like, so I think there's some questions still out there in terms of what are we still doing? What is better than last year at this time?
Right, so certainly we put the iWave systems, which are continuously cleaning the air in all of the air handling units, however they look, whether they're individual units inside the rooms or whether they're rooftop units. And so they're a pretty good product, and that will continue to go on. As for overhauling the entire HVAC system, that has not yet taken place. That was the hope, was to have that done this past summertime, but it is definitely in process, and the project has been approved. When you use federal funds, there are a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, and this was quite a busy summer getting those hoops, well, jumping through those hoops. So we will be working on all of the elementary schools, redoing all of their HVAC through the course of the year a portion of the middle school. And then we'll have to have conversations further about how it would take place, how we would would handle the rest of it.
But it's improved.
And we have plans to continue to improve it. And contracts that are being looked over as we speak.
So, we could probably go on and on and on, but I don't want to. I think we need to get moving, let school start. And so if I can get a motion from someone on something,
Okay, I'll make three motions.
go for it. Three motions,
I make
ready?
a motion that the board adopt the matrix and the matrix and the language to go along with the matrix. Understanding that we have some questions that hopefully will be answered in the next couple of weeks. That's the first motion.
Okay.
Do you need a second
So-
now, or are you gonna make all three?
No, one at a time.
Okay, I'll second that motion. the
Okay.
first one.
Charlie and Alicia. So we're right now voting on what Charlie just said, that we accept the matrix and the language to go along with the matrix, understanding that there are still questions to be answered in the next, few weeks. But so that we can start the school year and have something in place. Okay, all right, so all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed?
No,
Thank you. Abstain? All right, it carries 6-1-0.
The second motion would be to send the use of facilities to the policy committee to see if they can take a look at it and see if they want to make any changes to it before the board. Reviews it.
Okay,
There's no sense of urgency there right now.
okay. All right, so the second motion, that was it complete, right?
Like, yeah.
Okay, second motion is to take the part about the use of facilities by outside organizations, send it to the policy committee and have them go over that and bring back a policy recommendations, whatever.
Give it to Patty.
Second. Thank you, Patty. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose, abstain, carry 7-0-0. Thank you. And the third,
The third is that as far as busing is concerned and masks required on busing, that we take whatever's required by law mandate. And if there is no mandate, then we follow
our matrix.
our matrix. So in other words, if the law requires us to have masks on buses, we have masks on buses. If we don't have a law that requires that, then it will be no masks until we get to substantial on that.
Okay. So, thank you for the motion, Charlie.
So
Yeah.
I'll second that, but then I'd also like some discussion on it.
Yes.
So the discussion is this the discretion of the school district, or does the bus company have control over this?
I'm a little surprised that the bus company reported that it was not mandatory. I'm good friends with the superintendent over at Messina, so I can give her a call and see if she has some information that I don't have. And then, of course, can talk with the bus company as well. I mean, I met with them last week with the owner. So we obviously have some different information coming our ways. We do share the same bus company. They're a great bus company. We're very fortunate. Hey, we'll be driving kids to school. There's a lot of places that don't have their
They don't have the
bus
drivers.
drivers.
Okay. So that, yes, discussion. Any other discussion or questions before we vote? All righty, then the motion about the bus company finding out what it is and following whatever guides that. And if there isn't something legally that guides it, then we follow our matrix. Okay, and then also finding out. Okay, so We have a first, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain, 700. Okay. So thanks, folks, once again for your engagement and your interest. We're going to finish our board meeting. And I know that's really what you came for, was the rest of the meeting, isn't it? The consent agenda? No. Okay. Anyway,
I'd like to make a motion to add some things to the consent agenda.
yes, go
I'd like
for
to
it.
add Anna Duchard, instructional associate at RMS, starting August 30th. I'd like to add Brenda Starr, part-time instructional associate at JGS, starting August 30th.
Okay,
I need to, oh, are we accepting his motion now?
but that's, he made a motion. I need a second.
I'll second and then have one of my own.
Okay. Alicia. Well,
Well,
maybe
let's
we
vote
need-
on that motion that I
Yeah,
just
I think
seconded
we
first.
need to finish the first one and then not a motion on a motion. Okay, so we have a motion to add 2 people to the consent agenda. A second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain, 700. Thank you.
It's been a long day.
Uh-huh.
I need to make a motion to remove the minute, to pull the minutes for both the non-public and public on August 2nd.
Okay, so motion to pull public and non-public for August 2nd. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained?
I don't know, can I?
Okay, so now the consent agenda has been amended by 2 motions. I need a motion for the amended consent agenda.
I move we approve the amended consent agenda.
Thank you, Charlie. Second. Thank you, Lisa. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain. That carries 700. Thank you. And now,
I cannot vote on this one.
so we're now going to vote on the August 2nd.
I make a motion that we accept the public minutes of August 2nd and August, non-public of August 2nd.
Okay, public and non-public of August 2nd as written. I second that. Someone? Thank you, John. And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain? That carries 601. Okay, moving on. Action items, authorization to spend $10,456.62 from the Arthur Daniels Trust Fund.
This, I mean, I can speak to it, but probably not as well as if Heather is online. I would ask, and if Heather is not, Mr. Dustin is online and would be happy to speak to this. It has to do with a motion that we made earlier last time.
Yeah.
In part, anyway.
Okay. Right.
Great.
Speak, David, speak.
Can you hear me?
Oh. He's really quiet.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
There we go. Okay, David. Speak.
Okay, so this letter is a request sort of jointly put together by myself and Heather Lindstad for some equipment and improvements for athletic facility and wellness. So that we've spelled out in here the things that we're hoping to use the fund for. We're looking to do a little bit of wellness programming expansion in the courtyard area that can be used by both the high school and middle school, primarily for the purposes of these funds. The high school with the 9 in the Sky game that many of our learners have used over at Monadnock Christian Ministries in the past, and it's a really popular physical game. Lots of different skills that get used there. So we're hoping to purchase that to improve the athletic wellness facility of our courtyard basketball court area. We're also looking to improve the wellness center and the weight room with a large mirror to help learners with
learning the proper pose for using equipment, monitor themselves and things like that. A pretty large piece that's missing from our current beautiful wellness facility otherwise that we're hoping to purchase that mirror for. And then, as you know, the board has, and we thank you for it, approved us going to a JV program for volleyball. Unfortunately, our equipment's not in the best shape for improving that program. So we're hoping to purchase some new pieces of volleyball equipment so we can have that program really take off and continue to grow. And then the last request is for some new soccer goals to continue to support the growth of our high school soccer programming. So those are the 4 items listed here, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board may have.
Okay. Thank you, David. Does the board have any questions?
I assume the mirrors are portable, so if we move the gym or the weight room, the mirrors can be moved?
I don't believe that. I think we're purchasing a large sort of wall mount mirror that you might see in a gym. Like if you go to the gym, itself, that sort of a piece of equipment. I don't believe it was one that was designed to be portable, and there's no current intention to move the weight facility unless we do a larger sort of project down the road.
So if you put them up, you can't take them down.
You can, but not easily. It's not the type of mirror that you just pop off and put under your arm and walk away with.
Right, I understand that. Okay.
Yes. All right. Any other questions for David? Okay. How about a motion?
I make a motion that we approve expending funds from the Arthur Daniels Fund to purchase the items noted in the memo.
Okay, thank
Including the
you.
mirror.
Patty, I need a second. Okay, Christine, thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, carry 700. Next up, exchange students.
Well,
Good timing.
yeah, so we've had exchange students in the past. And I think that in the past, the board has been very favorable for having individuals from other areas of the world come, and it's good for them, it's good for our own learners here. So I certainly recommend doing it. I think it's a win situation all the way around. I don't know much about Hvac, this company. They have not provided us with a lot of information. This is what they provided to us. We don't know what town a student would be living in, whether it be Ringe or Jaffrey. I think they have a family
Hosting
somewhere.
family,
Yeah, they have
yeah.
it, but they won't tell us that. Would not let us know where the student was coming from either. I believe the individual they're saying would be right in the back there. Any unvaccinated, they will be
Inoculated on arrival.
yeah, so they'll be vaccinated here. Is the idea. So if that was a concern, but knowing that we are during COVID and not having a ton of information, wanted to bring that to the board and see if this is something that we wanted to do. We typically bring these items to the board, so you're aware of how many.
What is it that we need to do for this? I mean, I think it's.
If you approve, if you're in favor with us having exchange students this year, I would just tell the company, they're a legit company. Again, I don't know much about them, but they're legitimate. And that we would say, continue on with the process that you're using and we'll keep on going.
I think that there's so much educational advantage, not only to the Hvac students, but to our students as well.
Yeah.
The program, I think, should continue.
Yeah.
So
So I would feel I should comment because I'm the student exchange officer for the local Rotary.
Rotary, yeah.
And in fact, I have a meeting with David scheduled for Thursday, myself and another Rotarian, to talk about recruiting for next year.
Mhm.
Because our process requires people to apply early. And then they go through a 8-month orientation program. It's pretty extensive. The one point of confusion here is as you read this, or you could be confused. And I'm not talking about the actual sheet, but there's a link on there to some definitions that this company uses. I may be getting ahead of myself, actually, because we have a policy also that we're looking at on this. But one of the things we always do as Rotarian, as a Rotary program, is make sure that the school is behind this and that we have the authorization of the principal and the superintendent. But it's in terms of the students themselves, generally they come and they live with a family in the town. And the family that they live with has guardianship over the students. So usually it's not a legal question in terms of whether or not the district would accept the student. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Typically with the Rotary, you would let us know where the student's coming from. And in this
Absolutely.
case, because we don't know where the learner would be coming from, one thought that I had was, well, you might be concerned that it's coming from a location where there's high spread of
Right.
certain types of, things going on with, the Lambda variant. And I think he said South Africa or, I have no idea. So,
Central America.
yeah, but, they are saying that the individual will be inoculated.
And I imagine if we enter into some sort of understanding with this organization, that they might provide more information at that point.
I think we'd get more information if we told them we would continue down the path.
Yeah.
So,
And our country does have some sort of travel ban still in effect, so it would be very difficult for someone to come in from a country that had very high levels, right? That's a question.
One would think, you're right. Yeah.
I think my only hesitation would be, is this in competition with our current very successful Rotary program, particularly for finding host families? That's, I remember the emails and the messages going out to find host families and
it's not happening this year, right?
Well, it's been over the years, other exchange organizations that work under the same J1 program have also brought students here, usually not as frequently as the Rotary program. And, I appreciate what you're saying, but the competition for the host families, if they do the work to try and find people, that's okay.
And I wouldn't have thought that this would be for this year in particular. The letter states that it was sent May 11th. It would be way too late to be including any students coming in.
No, I think that they're interested.
It says incoming 21-22.
Yeah.
But this was sent May 11th.
It wasn't actually sent to me, but it was sent to us, I think, last week. I think that the information that they provided.
They
us
wrote
for a more general letter.
This is we asked for information and this is what they gave to us.
Okay,
They
thank you.
a canned letter
Okay.
to the school administrator.
Okay.
So
Does this need a motion?
that's what I'm thinking. It's like, so if we can have a motion to take the next steps with this group.
I'd like to make a motion to take the next steps with this group who's offering exchange students.
I'll second.
Thank you, Alicia and Christine. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay. 700. Check it out. Okay. Next. Communication plan, a presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been here quite a while already. I don't really see the need to do a big drawn out presentation, more just to kind of present very quick concepts, just maybe 5-10 minutes at absolute most. So we have revamped the communication plan. Plan was first approved in 2019, actually, during my first school board meeting, within like my first couple weeks of being here. So I was able to, not necessarily be a part of the first process, but I've obviously worked intimately with this. This plan has a little bit more of, I guess, me in it in terms of being in the position and trying to work with the committee to come up with goals. We did revamp, make things just look a little bit nicer, trying to follow a little bit more of a style with our documents. This takes some of the points stylistically that we made with some of our COVID documents. I'm trying to translate them into just broader, here are district documents. They all look the same. They all feel the same. So we added an introduction, just kind of saying how we got to where we are, why we are doing what we are doing. We kept the vision for communication the same. I don't see nobody really saw a reason to change that. The goals, the first two goals, other than maybe cleaning up some wording, exactly the same. There was an inclusion of a third goal, dealing with community involvement, just kind of looking at things like working with community partners to establish better relationships as to when we do or do not share information. Some of our policies could be looked at in terms of how we share that, not necessarily at the policy committee level, but even just school district stuff. Working more with students and learners and staff to like give access to like the equipment that we're currently using for the board meetings, live streaming other applications. This point last year, we live streamed a very similar meeting of the school board in this room with equipment, and it didn't work well, and we had a lot of issues. And now we're at a level where we have 3 cameras, multiple microphones, so on and so forth. So just being able to put this technology, break it down a little bit in the hands of students and others. So then revamped the look of the action steps, because I felt that kind of the grid-based system got a little confusing because there were situations in which things would get dropped onto a second page, not necessarily aligned as well. So kind of looking at what is the action step? What will this kind of allow us to, where are we kind of trying to go with this item? What are we trying to achieve? What goals it achieves? I thought that was another part of the issue with the first plan, is there were so many situations in which things were duplicated or they spoke to multiple goals and we didn't really acknowledge that. Resources, a timeline for completion, and then just kind of an addition of a standing as to where the project is. Many of these things are either at least conceptualized or in the works. This first one, completing the new website, it's supposed to be hopefully done by the start of the school year. We're in a place where we could technically go live right now if we wanted to. I'm currently going through the websites, cleaning them up, taking the time to really make sure the information's where it needs to be. I'm not going to go through each one of these goals because you guys, everybody has the opportunity to read this, but there's about 15 goals in total. I would say that this isn't exclusively what's going on in regards to communication. And obviously that little bit I'll clean up. For example, we have people in the building all day today working on installing our new clock system, which has safety components, but also communication components, and that we can send communication directly to a classroom if we need to. It has, safety applications for other reasons. There were a couple others I thought of today in terms of things that have been happening communication wise that aren't necessarily in the plan, but and then the other thing I wanted to include is, so in 2018, we did a survey. I wanted to do it again because we're doing this process over again. I took the 2018 survey, mimicked many of the questions. Some of them are almost exactly the same, so that what we could do is we could look at the data as to where we were in 2018 when we were acknowledging this as a big problem. Where are we right now? So this is kind of just breaking down and comparing and contrasting survey data between those two, looking at the different charts in terms of, these charts specifically show some areas in which we've had very large shifts. Looking at a 1 in this category, it's I don't agree with the statement. A 2 is I'm neutral. A 3 is I agree with this. So as you can see, the darker bar is 2018, the lighter bar is 2021. A big shift in our district regularly shares news about the qualifications and accomplishments of teachers. Really big shift in I am satisfied with the way our district is currently receiving messages or that we're sending. I'm satisfied with efforts that our school makes to collect and act on feedback, so on and so forth. And then just looking at, we also asked more open-ended questions this time, and just looking at what are we doing well, what are we not doing well that we need to improve on, what are some things that we just aren't doing at all that we'd love to implement. So this just kind of breaks down some of those more wordy responses into categories of things that could be better. Looking at the method of communication and what people want, I think it's important to note how people want to be responded to. Obviously, we're doing a lot of work to make sure that we're kind of hitting everybody everywhere if possible, but just also acknowledging that certain people want things in certain ways. And that kind of concludes the plan in and of itself. The goal was to present this to the board today. Obviously, you can act on it, approve it if you want. If not, you can also feel free to take some time to look it over and let me know, are there things that you'd like to change, make different? This has been vetted through our communication committee. We do have an acknowledgement of the members on the introduction at the bottom. So they've had a chance to look at this and offer feedback. So we're kind of in a place where the plan is mostly solidified, just waiting for school board approval.
Okay.
So I guess
That's
I'm
the
happy to
magic
take
word.
questions now if we want, or
That's just the magic word, waiting school board approval.
Well, before you do that though, could you summarize the big shift? Because there was a conversation maybe 2 meetings ago that the group had said, which is why goal 3 originated. And I can, if you don't know where I'm going with this, I'll be happy to talk to it. But the development of the community one and the kind of focus on how they wanted to see the communication shift in the future.
Yeah, so we had some people in our communication committee, I can't remember when we had a meeting, it was a couple months ago at least. This idea of involving students more and not just kind of reaching them and giving them information, but also involving them in creating more communications. We've had a couple small pockets of students who have maybe come together and created a small video. Some of the I'm trying to think of specific examples. When we had some information on Facebook and the website around a blood drive, those were actually student generated graphics. So we already have some pockets where students are saying, hey, this is something I'd like to help with. The goal is to really kind of involve them more actively. There's a goal to speak specifically to this idea of creating like an ELO or a club where I can personally try to devote some time to working with students, giving them some, perhaps in a couple months, we could have a student sitting next to me helping to operate this equipment, and they could learn, how this equipment works. We could have students take cameras and make little video projects that we can post online. Just really kind of, we've had a history of people saying, hey, I want to do this. When I first came aboard a couple of years ago, we had a couple students that were interested in a broadcast club, but we didn't really have the equipment and it never really took off. We did have one student that had some interest. We tried to work on a schedule and it just ultimately fell through, but trying to just devote more time to getting this equipment and getting these concepts in the hands of students, staff, so that they can also be a part of the process of promoting things that are going on. Another example of that, more, I guess, on the staff level, but also the student level, is we had the Memorial Day video that we released. There was a whole section in which I worked with a classroom to have them record audio. They sat down during a class period, almost in like a recording booth of sorts, and recorded the audio, met with some students, did some video work. When we did the the live stream, I did have one student that was actually operating a camera. So one of the cameras that we had moving, I was operating one as I normally do with a controller, but we had a student that was sitting in the back and was actually, selecting shots and things like that. So that was a big thing that was missing from the last communication plan, was that ability to not have this be like the committee's doing things, the district's doing things, but also acknowledging that the learners are an important part of pushing, some of these messages forward. And if they're ultimately creating content, it's showcasing things that they're proud of, things that they want to be involved in, so on. So.
Thanks.
I would just like to say, Nick, you are really an invaluable resource for us.
Thank you.
I work with many communications people and technology people, and your drive consistently is learner focused, not just tech focused. And you really are looking at the tools to say, how is this going to best serve us? And just kudos. This is a very comprehensive plan. I don't know how you will have time to do that and work directly with kids, but I want to see that more. That's well done.
Yeah, I mean, I originally had a more aggressive timeline, and I actually took a step back and looked at it and actually mapped
Really?
it out. And I'm like, yeah, this is not, I can try to do a lot, but there's only so much I can do. So I tried to spread things out a little bit more.
Okay. Wisdom.
I think it's a great report, and I'm extremely impressed by not only is it a good report on what you did, but it also the results that you obtained, which you don't usually see that. So I think it's great.
Okay, so.
Yeah, nice job.
No, motion.
No,
Motion.
motion. Come on, it's
Move that we
9:24. I
adopt
wanted
the
to be done by
communication
9:30. 9:24.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Yes. I move that we adopt the communication plan.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain? Great, 700.
Thank you.
All right. Policy, first reading.
Okay, so this policy, we actually meant to get it on the last agenda. This is a conversation that we've been having for a bit of time. And we took a look at some sample policies from some schools. It's about admission and tuition of non-residential students. Specifically, this policy was brought forward because of the individuals, one, we made a decision as a board, we made a decision as a board last year to allow for some children of employees to attend. And so there are some who have been inquiring about whether that could possibly continue a little bit. There are new individuals who are saying that we'd really like that. Some of it has to do with the ease of them being able to have their child there. Others are just excited about the direction the district is going and wants their kid to be in a better, what they perceive to be a better situation, academically and socially and so forth. So I think we took the bulk of it anyway, the over like 98% of it from the NADNOC had a policy. And so we liked that and was putting this forward for review. Now it's for first reading. I can also say that the school year is starting
before we meet again.
And I do have some requests. But I just have said that we're continuing to look at that. That's where we're standing right now.
When you say request, is a request from employees?
So the non-resident students of district employees needs to be looked at. It's not including some of the things that we had discussed in the policy meeting. Are you guys seeing that?
That it's not including it?
Yeah, Patty and I were just kind of reviewing that.
Specifically the preschool.
Right, this did not include preschool.
Yeah, and that's not stated in the policy.
Yes, K through, it was supposed to be specific to K through 12 placement.
Okay.
And that was important.
Because of the lottery system.
Because of lottery
It was
system,
only
they're
fair
free
to-
for now.
We
Yeah.
couldn't be sure that they would get it. 'cause-
Yeah.
So
And we.
Was there something else that was missing? Or was that the
That was it. That was the only
That's
thing
the
I
thing,
saw.
yeah, it was so
Yeah.
it's supposed to say K through 12.
And I think at one point we were talking about certain numbers, but then I think we came around to the idea that it was based on space availability because
Says up to
You-
5. That can vary from year to year, time to time.
it may be, but it may, you know, if you have one teacher and has two students, that's a high percentage of the number available of the seats. So I think that's where we were a little.
Yeah,
And we
well, I
really
think what we
wanted this-
said was, I thought what we said was that the superintendent may,
Yeah.
like this would say that may
Yes.
approve,
Right.
but that the board can approve more if they
Right,
want to, but that the board should be aware of what's happening and then be able to make that decision based upon.
We didn't want to limit ourselves. The goal was for this to be, we didn't want to limit ourselves within the policy. The goal was for this to be sort of a staff retention effort.
So do we want to waive the second reading amended to read K to 12?
I'd like to suggest that we move on this policy just because there are employees who are waiting to hear whether or not it will or will not be adopted prior to the start of the school year. So, and if possible, that would be wonderful.
How many students are we talking about for this year?
So we did talk
Non-resident
about
students?
that last year. Was it 3 district-wide? I think is what you had shared, Ruben.
Well, 3 families, yeah.
3
I think
families,
it's been 4 kids.
So it wasn't a significant, number.
I have 3, I think, again,
This
that
year.
have requested. Others that might be waiting because we've had conversations with them before, but and that those three probably make up for 5 kids.
So I'd like to make a motion that we waive the second reading.
And
Can I do both?
But
Okay.
We want to
And-
add the, yeah.
And that we adopt this as amended to read K to 12.
okay,
Second.
Patty, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, 700.
So maybe the sentence would say, after the first paragraph, this applies to learners K through 12. Would that be fine? I'm just wondering where that language or how you
Well,
want it.
admission and tuition for non-resident students K to 12.
Yep.
In the title, it's implied.
Okay. Okay, so the title just needs to change to K to 12. Okay.
For now. Okay, board committee updates.
Policy is not meeting in August. We felt it was best to table our meeting so that we can really focus on getting ready for the first day of school and have staff put their effort there. So we will meet again in September.
Sounds good.
We have a facilities committee meeting today for about an hour and discussed a bunch of topics. And if it would please the board, I'd be willing to put together a brief summary and send it out by email.
Okay. Great.
The wellness committee meets August 30th, so we haven't met yet.
Okay, all right. Others coming up, we've got,
Communication.
Yeah, there,
committee meets
I
in
might be trying to plan a communication committee meeting before the start of school year. We are in a place right now where the website, as I said, could go live, but just kind of trying to just vet that through the committee to say, hey, is this what we want? Also additionally, our app is in the, has been developed. It needs to be finalized and approved, and then they can work with the Apple Store, the Google Play Store and all that to get it to go live. So website live, more than likely start of school year or maybe a week after the app within the first month. So.
all right,
Finance committees meeting Thursday.
Yep.
If Carrie has retained funds information.
okay, great. So we're gonna forego the public comments because we did it already. Just did it in a different spot. Board matters or future items?
I'd love an update on the letter that we need to write to the state for the building and trades remodeling, just at some point. You can email us later in the week, that's fine. I'm pins and needles trying to find out what's going on.
All right, anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion for dismissal or adjournment, pardon me.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Patty. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.